Hey guys, welcome to another video. It's your boy, favorite content creator here. I know it's been quite a while since my last video, but as you know, life gets a little crazy sometimes. And while thankfully, many of the topics I talked about in my last video are sorted today, more or less, I haven't really felt inspired to make another video for quite some time. And just recently I felt that spark of inspiration, so I really wanted to make a video and to take the opportunity. So I also really wanted to change the format of the video that I usually record. So for this time it will be more of a commentary with some gameplay footage in the background. So a small recap, ever since my last video I've gotten not only a job, but I've been in and out of 4 different jobs in less than a year, which at least to me personally is quite a bit, considering that I only worked one job before in Argentina, and honestly I wouldn't even go as far as to consider it a real job anyways. But regardless of that, I will be talking a little bit about my experience as such. So let's go back to April 2024, so more or less after posting my last video. Considering that I arrived in Portugal in February of the same year, up until this point I was not able to score a single job interview, and I honestly felt like everything was just crumble away in my life. I was running out of money, I was running out of food, and I was starting to not be able to even afford rent, which is actually quite a recurrent theme and issue throughout this video, so please bear with me. So more or less around this time, I was applying to whatever job posting I saw. So things as a waiter, receptionist, cashier, bricklayer, cleaner, whatever I could find that could produce me at least some money was just fine for me. So you could say I was most certainly desperate as fuck. Then I was contacted by a restaurant owner. So this was the first actual job that I got here, which was working as a waiter at a restaurant, who should not be named for reasons I will be getting to in a few minutes. But just to make this long story short, I only lasted there for about a week after getting fired. To be honest, well, working there was certainly very stressing, and you see, food industry and service industry requires you to have a stone face when dealing with customers, and even more so when you have this extra pressure coming from, the owner in this case, who was, at first, he seemed like a very cool guy, a very chill guy, but in practice he was just super aggressive. He wasn't a nice person, honestly, to work with. He always seems to be angry at everyone. He will shout at the personnel. Honestly, not a good experience working in a restaurant. And also the pay was absolute ass. He promised minimum wage. Well, actually, no, he promised even under minimum wage, which at that point was around 820 euros. That was the minimum wage in Portugal. However, he was offering me 800. No contract. So that's great. So I worked there for about 8 days. And funnily enough, at the 8th day I got a call from one of the job postings that I had applied to, and they were asking me if I was available that day for an interview. So I decided to call in sick at the restaurant that day so I could actually take the interview. And what's funny is that when I called the owner to tell him that I wasn't feeling good, and bear in mind I had gone to the restaurant in the morning, so I did my morning shift, he told me, oh, that's fine, that sounds very good, you don't have to come here tomorrow. And I was like, what do you mean? And he told me, yeah, you don't have to come here anymore, just come here tomorrow, collect your payment, and don't return. And that was pretty funny. Honestly. I felt a mix of feelings, because I was happy about the fact that I didn't have to work there anymore because the place sucked, but also was kind of scared because of the fact that I no longer had a job. I was essentially fired, and I didn't know when was going to be the next time I would actually get any money from anywhere. So this was actually pretty scary. but also pretty liberating. Especially the fact that my shifts were almost 12 hours long. So I would go there to a restaurant at 11 a.m. and sometimes I would leave at around 1 to 2 a.m. So like next day. And it was, of course, it was not retributed financially speaking. We were not getting good payment, honestly. Everyone there was also a migrant. No one had a single contract. Everything was just super sketchy. So yeah, I have huge respect for anyone who works in the service industry or anything related to restaurants. Honestly, huge respect. But that's a no-no for me. I would never go back to something like that. Honestly, I would not recommend. If you're super desperate to get anything, it works. But it's not a place to stay there for a long period of time. Maximum 3 to 6 months. So after the experience, which was honestly not too pleasant, we come to the second job that I got more or less right after this one. So this was more or less in June, July. After I had been fired from the restaurant, I started working at a call center, who should also remain unnamed, because unfortunately I had to sign an NDA where I'm not able to disclose anything about this company and the things that they do. So I will not be naming it. I can give a few hints, like the fact that it is a pretty big call center inclined company here in Portugal. And to be honest, at first it was pretty nice because the payment was more or less decent. So it was a little bit over minimum wage. Though, the problem with this type of job is that you have to have a customer voice, if you will, and you have to deal with customers constantly. So imagine 8:30 a.m., you sit at your desk, put on your headphones, and calls start coming in as soon as you put your headphones on. That was honestly super tiring because most people were kind of nice. There were some people that were super rude, super aggressive with their demands. So it was really hard to stay focused, and it was super mentally draining. Because imagine a customer comes in, they demand for something, for you to fix their problem. And you try your best. Sometimes most problems aren't even fixable. And they scream at you, they get mad at you, they insult you, and you really cannot do anything. You cannot hang up on them. You cannot tell them anything. You cannot reply to them in that sense. So you're really just sitting there being powerless, and you really start thinking to yourself, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? But again, it was certainly a lot better than working at the restaurant because at least I was sitting down and I was getting a proper contract, which was the main thing that attracted me to this place was, well, getting an actual contract. Though I only stayed there for about a month because I just could not handle the absolute pressure. Because there was also a lot of pressure coming from the managers who wanted everyone to do extra unpaid time. Not only that, but they also pushed to fill some metrics. So for example, having short call times, getting positive reviews, and honestly things that would make sense if they were possible to obtain. So they were pushing us to have calls that were shorter than 15 minutes and also to get positive reviews on every single one or every single call. The problem is, usually calls last from 15 minutes to almost an hour, if not even more. Sometimes some of the issues are just not fixable on the spot. They require you to stay there and guide the customer. And many customers are actually either old people or people who are just not techie. They don't really know that much about technology, so they're not technologically inclined. So it is hard and very time consuming to guide them. to its solution. So then again, it will be very unlikely that you will actually get calls that are shorter than 15 minutes. And also the fact that more often than not, so this is a random thing, usually customers after the calls ended, they get a survey where they ask about your performance. The thing is, you should not tell the customer to give you a good review. That will go against the terms of service, if you will. The thing is, more often than not, even if you did all your best and you did resolve the issue, customers will give you a bad review and that would fuck up your metrics. And here's the thing, the problem with the metrics is the fact that they contribute to your salary. It's important to mention that they do contribute. They do not make up all of your salary, but they make a good difference. So you can go from earning the base salary, which is 820, to maybe 1,200, 1,100. You can make a good difference having good metrics because you get rewarded by that. The problem is those metrics are just unobtainable. Doesn't matter how hard you try, doesn't matter how hard you work. It's really, really hard to get those metrics. So what I did, I would just take calls that were actually easy, with problems that were easy to fix, and I would just drag them as long as possible, because I knew getting those metrics was just impossible, so there was no point even trying. But again, it gets super draining, super fast. So again, just like restaurant work, I would not recommend working in a call center unless, again, you're super short of money and you absolutely need to get a job. The pros of this job, certainly the fact that, well, you make more or less over minimum wage and you get a contract. So if, like me, a migrant, and you need to have some papers, this will certainly contribute towards that. However, again, not a place to stay in the long run because it will wear you down both mentally and physically. So let's jump a little bit forward into time. So I'm not even sure what moment we are right now. That will be, last time was July, so more or less in August, I actually was approved to become a delivery driver, worker, something like that, if you will. So I didn't have a motorcycle or a bike. I actually had one of those scooties, electric scooters. So I started doing deliveries back then, and actually the job was pretty fine. It was actually fun, in my opinion. It was actually very fun to do. Essentially, mostly because of the fact that you don't have a boss to boss you around in a way. So it was the freedom what I enjoyed, and I really liked that. However, the pay was honestly not too good, but I attribute that to the fact that I didn't really have a bike. So working on an electric scooter, honestly, is not ideal. Absolutely not ideal. Usually the battery runs out very fast and you're not really able to get that many deliveries done, and also you don't really do them fast enough, and it's not really efficient. But the job itself is actually pretty fun. I remember one time, I think this was my first delivery ever. It was a McDonald's order. I remember I picked up the order and I started going to a place which was around 2 kilometers away, which doesn't seem too far away, but with an electric scooter, that's essentially all of your battery. But that was not the issue. I went there, everything seemed to be fine, until I actually had to give the actual food to the client, to the person who ordered the food. Because when I picked it up, it was fine, so it was a McDonald's order. The problem is it had a drink in there, which I didn't realize at the time was just stumbling around in my bag. And when I had to give it to the customer, it was just dripping because the drink had just spilled everywhere. Thankfully, they didn't complain about that, and at the time, I think they didn't realize it. So I just gave it to them, and I left super fast, and I closed the order. So they probably did get a refund afterwards, but yeah, it wasn't too pleasant of an experience. Though again, it is a more or less fun job to do, especially since you are your own boss in a way. But you do need to grind quite a bit to get that extra money, especially since they do pay extra on rainy days and usually when it's late at night, so around up to 4 a.m. there are orders. So you're able to work almost in 12-hour shifts, which again, if you do grind it out and you have the correct vehicle to move around, you can make quite a good killing with it. So before moving to my last and current job, I will be talking about some special mentions. At one point, I had essentially just given up on finding a quote-unquote real job. So I was just grinding different applications and platforms that pay you money online. Again, I was aware of the fact that I was not able to make a full living out of this, but they do certainly help me out a lot, and they made at least enough for me to cover food expenses and whatnot. And just to clarify, this is not a sponsored video at all, though I would wish it was, but it is not. At this point in time, I was very big on watching a YouTuber called Kamikaze Cash, who makes videos about essentially just making money online and whatnot. I would actually recommend his channel. He makes very good content regarding this. So some of the apps that I used back then to make at least some money, some beer money if you will, those were Free Cash, Adapole, Clash.gg and Honeygain. There were some others that I did also use, but those were the main ones. So I would just wake up in the morning around 8 a.m. and I would just sit down on my computer and grind those apps. I would grind them all day long, and honestly I wasn't making all that much money. It wasn't enough to cover rent at all. I should probably will be showing some screenshots of the total earnings that I made on those sites, but again, I am not a millionaire, though I wish I was. I made some money, some cash to cover food and whatnot, but again, I was not expecting to make a living out of this. So more or less to summarize, what I would do with these apps is usually I would sign up onto Free Cash and I would grind any survey or any game that they had available so I could get some starting money for the day. Then I would move on to Adapole, where I will also try to grind surveys, while at the same time I would be running Honeygain in the background. So I will be making, you could say, passive income, though again, not more than a few pennies every few days, so not every day. And I would also log into Clash.gg every day, first so I could collect the daily bonus that they give, which is usually a free case that you can spin. And I would also collect the free rain. So they have a system where they give out a few pennies, like every half an hour, more or less. So you can sign up to that and you can collect some money. And then you will have to gamble that away. And if you make a profit, you will be able to withdraw it. So that, of course, is quite grindy, but it was worth it. It was possible. So after all this, I will be finally talking about the last and current job that I currently have, which is essentially I am a game tester, which, to be honest, ever since I was a kid, this has been my dream job. That honestly I never expected to find this type of job here in Portugal, let alone be able to get into it. So this was more or less back in September. I actually had applied to this job position at the start of last year, so more or less around February to March 2024. Thing is, back when I applied, the company didn't really get back to me after around a few months. So after all that I talked about, they did get back to me, and they actually did reject my resume for around 3 consecutive times, though I'm still not sure why they did that. I didn't give up and I just kept on reapplying and tweaking my curriculum until it fit their criteria, which I honestly didn't really know what it was at the time. So I was lucky enough to actually score an interview with the HR manager at the time. And well, I was of course super scared because up until this point I was still looking for a permanent job. So I did the best I could and I talked about my interests in video games. And yeah, took the interview. I was scared as fuck. I didn't really want to fuck it up at all. I couldn't sleep the night before. But thankfully it went super well, actually. I was contacted a few days afterwards. I started working back in September, more or less. And so far, everything's been going pretty well, actually. I've been in a few nice projects. And I must say, many of my coworkers are super nice people. And the environment to work there, it's super friendly, super nice, super inclusive. So it doesn't matter where you come from. It will be a very welcoming and open place. So that's honestly what I was looking for in a job. Besides obviously the fact that I make enough money to sustain myself and not to die. So yeah, that'll be more or less it actually. It's been a rocky year, but honestly, I think it turned out pretty well. I'm currently employed in a job that I do like, that I do enjoy, and I don't feel depressed anymore. I do enjoy waking up in the morning and going to my job and going back home super fucking tired, but feeling refreshed and feeling satisfied with the fact that I do something that I do enjoy. And not only that, I'm getting paid for it. So I don't know, it may sound super dumb, super silly, but that's something to me that it always felt like absolutely unobtainable and impossible, and here I am doing it. So yeah, I don't know what's the main point of the video. I'm just rambling and complaining, but I'm also super thankful about what the things that happened to me. And yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, please leave a dislike and a very angry comment. And yeah, see you in the next one. Oh my god!